Namaste. Good morning, everyone. Today is a special day for me. 27th September 2009 is when my Guru passed away. And it was a Sunday. And today is 27th September 2020, a Sunday. And the first talk that I have given on what is referred to here as his Punya Tithi, auspicious date, sacred date. The date a revered one passes away is referred to as Punya Tithi. The greatest gift that Rameshji gave, as also others from the lineage, was the lack of dependency on the form of the Guru and complete trust and faith in consciousness. This does not mean that there was no grief and sadness when he passed away. But that grief and sadness did not get stretched in the duration of time. And make one spin out of control in a whirlpool of emotions. In fact, the grief and sadness was total, 100% there. Not overlaid by what will happen to me now that the Guru is gone. That was the inbuilt feature of this teaching, you see, because it is a lived teaching. It is already in one's bloodstream. So the Guru as the teaching is always with you. Nisargadatta Maharaj said, the Guru's words are like hard cash, available for immediate use. The Guru's words are like hard cash available for immediate use. But what happens is, when we pull out this cash from our wallet, many times the yes but arises and we put the money back in. But if there is trust in the words of the Guru, of the guide, the mentor, whatever word you give it, it is available for immediate use. Many times I receive emails where people say that we understand everything. It is so simple, it is so clear, but yet we find no change in our attitude, in our approach. This is very important because oftentimes people blame the teacher or the guru for not being good enough for them, for not being a change agent. But the point is, to be reborn, are you willing to die to the old? Or do you expect that you can comfortably hold on to the old and still wish to be reborn? It is not possible. For rebirth, something has to give, something has to die. Your old concepts, you have to let go of. You can't hold them in one hand with a clenched fist and keep the other hand open and say, now I'm willing to receive the teachings. That is why the great masters had said, most of us hear but don't listen. Because listening is total. When we hear, we have our arsenal of yes buts already ready to fire away. The doubting mind, the mind that does not trust, you see, I was very fortunate in one sense. When I started visiting Rameshji, I found what he was saying was very obvious. Simple things like everything is God's will, one has no control over anything, the results are definitely not in our control, and so on. Why? Because it was my life's experience. Therefore, I assumed that it is everybody's life experience. Because it was such a natural way to live, you see, to accept these basic tenets. It was over time that I realized that no, for many people, they cannot accept everything is God's will. They cannot accept no one is the doer of their actions. So it was not a kind of arrogance on my part. It was just assumed that everybody must have experienced this in life with a loss they didn't foresee, with something not happening as they had planned, and so on. And therefore, Rameshji had this practice, you could call it, of personal investigation, where he would tell people that sit back for just 15 minutes in the evening, relax, be comfortable, and see what has transpired in the day, and see whether any action that you took was really your action, or did it depend on something you heard, tasted, smelled, touched, and so on. And if what you heard, saw, tasted, touched was not in your control, how could the action be yours? Now, you see, even this personal investigation never arose for me because the answer was so obvious that really you see something, you cross the road or you look at something and something happens. So this personal investigation was not undertaken by me. It is only later that I understood that this teaching itself was a validation of my life's experience, but not so for everyone. This is why, after Rameshji passed on, it was my friend Roger who would tell me, we meet once a year, that no, Gautam, this is not how everyone views life. And he would encourage me to speak about this because I had assumed it as a default. The world has changed dramatically. From the reports I hear, apparently this is yet the beginning. And this teaching is more appropriate today than ever before. A natural consequence of this teaching is not to harm the other. Because if one accepts that consciousness is all there is, would consciousness harm consciousness? Now, if we look at the subjects top of mind today, be it racism, be it climate change, and so on, all what is happening is about harming the other. Animals, trees, people, yet This too was meant to happen. And what will follow is also meant to happen. It is being anchored in the teaching, any teaching. People may be following different teachings, different masters, whatever it be. It is the anchoring in that that makes one ride through these storms of life. Being anchored. A total acceptance that one does not know what the next moment brings. This reminds me of a story, I don't know where I read it, of an emperor who had an enlightened prime minister. Now, this emperor was known to have a short fuse, a short temper. And one day, he lost his cool on the prime minister and said, "You will be executed tomorrow." And everyone was aghast. Now, tomorrow came, and the king said, "What is said is said. I can't take back my words. Be prepared for your execution." And the prime minister started weeping profusely, uncontrollably. And the king was shocked. He said, "You weeping? You who have seen so many battles through, so many hardships, so many situations. You weeping? I'm shocked." And the prime minister said, "Oh no, I'm not weeping at the fact that I'm going to be executed. I am weeping looking at that horse that you rode on and came to see me." So the emperor was taken aback. "My horse made you weep?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I am weeping because I have something nobody else has. And that is, I can teach a horse to fly. But only one type of horse. And that type of horse is the one which you rode on and came to see me." So the emperor was perplexed. He said, "You never told me this, that you had this gift." He said, "All right, I will stay your execution for 1 year. And if in this 1 year you can teach the horse to fly, you will not be executed. In fact, I will give you half my kingdom because I will be known throughout the world that the emperor whose horse could fly." Now, the Prime Minister went back to his wife, who had already heard this news. And she said, "Are you stupid? How can you make a horse fly?" And she said, "What is even worse is if you were executed now, my suffering would have been there and then, and I would have moved on in life, mourning your loss. Now, for 1 year, I have to live with the stress and anxiety that you will be executed 1 year from now. Which is worse?" she tells her husband. This 1 year of knowing I am going to lose you will be unbearable. Why didn't you ask for 10 years to make the horse fly? So the Prime Minister said, "Are you silly? As it is, I pushed it quite far by saying I can teach his horse to fly. 1 year is enough. If I ask for 10 years, he would definitely not believe me." But he told his wife, "You have missed something, my dear. In this 1 year, the horse can die, or the king can die, or I can die of other causes, or you can die." Can one live knowing this, that anything can happen at any point in time? Nothing is guaranteed. Which has already been one's life's experience. Rameshji, before passing away, used this word which I had never heard him use before, called Vishal Hriday. Translated literally, it would mean huge heart. Big heart, huge heart. What it points to is the heart of being, the heart of consciousness, limitless, infinite, all embracing. To see what is seen, not by the physical eyes, but the heavenly heart, as it is said in some teachings. Not a heart that differentiates, makes exclusive relationships. These are my loved ones, these are not my loved ones. These people I like, these people I don't like. These people are near to me, these people are not near to me. These people I care about, these people I don't care about. That starts dissolving. It is the relationships which give one the most trouble that are actually the gifts to look at what all arises within oneself as a reaction. Obviously, if you hate someone, the hate is within you. Waiting to come out. If you judge someone, the judgment is within you. The other is a mirror. Just like the Guru is a mirror, but the Guru is a clear mirror with no stains, pure presence, pure being. So, whatever is projected onto the Guru is what the student or disciple associates with. And that is why Osho said that if you call a guru an idiot, it means you are an idiot. He was talking a deep truth, you see. We have to be careful before labeling people. Forget gurus, anyone. Some of you might have read my essay, The End of Duality, on Rameshji's last few months. If you haven't, then if you would like to, please do, because I have shared some deep learnings. They say the fire burns brightest before it goes out. That is what I saw. That is what people with Maharaj saw. It is a gift. One can get consumed in that fire, and all that is false burns away to ash. That burning away can happen while one is alive, rather than carrying this baggage till our death. All right. If there are any questions, we can take them now, or if anyone would like to share anything. But please ensure that your video is turned on, because purely from a security point of view, we cannot accept no videos if you choose to ask a question. Yes, Navya.
Namaste, Gautam ji.
Namaste.
This is my first time attending your satsang. Actually, it just happened by accident. I was not able to for the past many weeks because I have a young son. So today it just happened. I suppose it was meant to happen. So uh, I just wanted to share that the teaching happened during entered my life during the lockdown, and since then there has really been such a presence of a sense of calm and peace in my life that I had never before experienced. I didn't even realize I was carrying this weight of, it was such a relief when, like you said, it was so simple when you said that nobody does anything, things just happen and people are the way they are. It just resonated so deeply, and it just lifted this enormous weight from my shoulder that I didn't even realize I was carrying for all this time. And the biggest conflict, the person with whom I was having the biggest conflict, it just evaporated when I finally accepted that she is the way she is because she's meant to be that way, and I am the way I am because I am meant to be this way. So really, it has been such a blessing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. No amount of thanks is enough for the sense of peace I feel. I also had a question. Um, as you have mentioned in many of your videos, Nirvana, in terms of what the teaching says and what Buddha has also said, it is the sense of peace. It is Shanti. But Maharaj, Nisargadatta Maharaj, in one of his books, has also mentioned that the ultimate realization is when you abide in that which is prior to even consciousness. So, are these the same? How to understand this?
Navya, from a lived perspective, they are the same because in both, one is immersed in deep peace. And to awareness of consciousness is also an idea within consciousness. So if we keep the concepts aside, the end result of both is a life of peace and calm, of being anchored in being, you see. So it is,
Okay.
in that sense, it is the same thing. And you see, what you mentioned was, it's very important when you accept others the way they are. This compulsion to want to change others drops away. We always feel we can change others and give them advice and tell them you should be this way, you should not be that way. That compulsion drops away because now we know that even what we feel is based on our filters and conditioning. It is not the truth. So we may tell someone that you should be more kind, you should be less miserly, and so on, but that's the way you are seeing it. So this, when this compulsion to change others drops away, it is a very big sign that the teaching has gone deep. So just wanted to share that with you, and thank you very much for your beautiful sharing, because this is it, you see, a teaching, and I keep saying any teaching which delivers peace in times of confusion, strife, and uncertainty. That teaching is truly a gift. Truly, truly. Okay?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Apratim. Apratim.
Hello, sir.
Hello, have I pronounced your name correctly?
No, sir. It's correct. It's correct.
Okay.
Hello, sir. So my question is
Are you in the car?
that the yes, sir.
Well, many
Because
people
my
like sitting
family,
in their
people
cars
are
and
there,
attending
and
satsang.
I cannot
Are you
talk
just
there.
another one? Okay, sorry.
Right. Yeah. So my question is that the consciousness or awareness, or whatever we want to call it, which is functioning within me, is the same which is functioning within you or in anyone, even in inanimate objects. So my question is that if someone gets enlightened, why does it have to be localized and individualized? If someone gets enlightened, why does not whole cosmos and everyone gets enlightened at one time? So that is my question.
Because everyone is on their individual journey. Everyone is born uniquely with a unique set of genetics, conditioning, and so on. So the blossoming or the flowering will be based on their sanskaras, vasanas, karmic imprints, which is different for everyone. You see, but it's a nice question you asked, because eventually, as it is said in the scriptures, for example, in the Satyug, the age of truth, what will be there is enlightened living. You see? So, right now, it appears as a process, like rungs of a ladder which have to be climbed by various individuals. But enlightenment is the dissolution of that individual climbing that ladder. So there were times like Krishna was one example, Jesus one example. It happened over time. The avatars came, the mystics came to lead humanity. It is in the process of chronological time. But will there be a time When everyone is enlightened, the whole point is when that time comes, nobody will be left to ask the question. So that's quite a cosmic joke, you see. But more important than that, what about your own journey? What about your own enlightenment? What about your own peace? Let's look at that. Let's think about that. Let's focus on that because it is your life's journey. And in that sense, you could say that a contribution to this journey of enlightenment for everyone. So rather than get lost in conceptual questions, let's bring it down to me and my relationship with others, what happens to me, the events in my life, and so on. Okay? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I think I saw Holger's
Thank you.
hand up and now it went down. So, Holger, if you are watching this, if you've changed your mind, that's fine. But if your hand went down for some other reason, feel free to put it back up. I always enjoy talking to you. And meanwhile, we have here Siddhant, and I presume it's his mom again. So let's see. Oh,
Yeah, hi Gautam, can you hear me?
hi. How are you?
Good, good. So I actually had a question regarding non-doership, the concept of non-doership. So my understanding so far has been that we are not the thinkers, and it's easy for me to verify that also because thoughts arise, and you can see that thoughts arise, and even the choosing of the thought is a decision or a thought in itself. And therefore, it means that when you choose the thought, the action also is not yours. One thing, however, a lot of teachers, including yourself and Nisargadatta Maharaj, say is that one requires intent and earnestness in the teaching. But in my experience, I've noticed that intent and earnestness too is transient. So that's where a certain sense of confusion does arise. And if you could just elaborate on that, that would help.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very honest question you have asked because ultimately, Siddhant, it is true that even the earnestness is not in your control. But what Maharaj is pointing at, as well as other masters, is that if you have seen enough in life and you know that your priority is peace, for example, that burning desire to find that peace needs to be there. The full focus needs to be there in order to get, in that sense, where you want to get. So when he says that earnestness needs to be there, intent needs to be there, you see now someone who has suffered much more than you in life because of life's circumstances will have that natural quality because they want a way out. They are tired of being buffeted between the banks of not just pleasure and pain, but pain and pain. So that earnestness becomes a default setting, a total default setting. In some people, where it's okay, I've seen a few ups and downs, by and large, I'm comfortable. They may not have that drive, that earnestness to pursue this journey. What is life about? Why am I here? Who am I? That may not be there because life's circumstances are such that they have not been driven as others have been to find out what is true and untrue. So it is a very individual thing in that sense. It does not mean that someone who is not as earnest as another is lacking in any way. It is because they have been made that way, you see. But the masters are just pointing to this fact that look, if you want something, let's say you want a car, a nice fancy car, your focus is going to be on earning the money to get the car. Similarly, if you want to find out who you are, if you want to find peace in daily living, you have to focus on it. It cannot be a part time activity or where you say, okay, I'm devoting half an hour towards my peace and the rest of the day I'm going to be involved in other things. That is what they are pointing.
No, that really helps.
Okay. Don't feel guilty if you're less honest.
No, not really. It does come and go, and I do feel that certain experiences do propel you for the truth. In a lot of cases, it can be pain, which triggers the inner calling for peace. So I do get that. But yeah, there is a sense of wanting to constantly hammer at the shell.
Yeah. That is also not in your control.
True.
Okay. Yes, Shabnam.
So yes, so our conversation.
Yeah, just talk. Just talk.
Sorry. So our conversations are ours. Get on to this about not being in our control, and sometimes the complacency comes that this is not in our control. This is God's will, and so therefore, one is earnestness. The other is, this is the constant question, that do we really sit back and wait for God's will to happen? And like, of course, you answered that earlier, that, we have to put in the effort. But like right now also, you just said that, it depends upon the genetics and circumstances, where if somebody has really gone through something, the earnestness will be more. So is this entire thing the programming? Is it the script? What is it?
Yes, it is. But you see, the ego is quite mischievous because it can take this as a license to be complacent. That, oh, it's all God's will, let it happen when it is meant to happen. You see, everyone is having a different nature. For example, some people are more active than others. Some people can do the work of 3 people. Someone by nature is more complacent, has a slower pace to do work. With this teaching, you understand that the person who is highly active is living according to their programming, and the person whose nature is not that is living according to their programming. So it is not about telling a complacent one that, look, you better be more active. And it's not about telling the one who's more active to be complacent, because that is all comparing and judging, you see. Everything is left to function the way it is functioning. And this does not mean that you have to sit back and accept God's will. This means you have to do what is in your nature to do, because that is God's will. You see, because many people who just get introduced to this teaching say, oh, if I'm not the doer, that means I should sit back and just relax and whatever has to happen will happen. That's not true, you see, because that is the ego saying, now what shall I do? I shall sit back and relax. That is also doership. All this teaching is doing is shining a light on things the way they are. That's it. It is not saying sit back, relax, and wait for God's will to happen. It's certainly not saying that. Otherwise, Krishna would have told Arjuna, don't fight, just sit back and relax in the chariot, take a nap. Whatever happens is God's will. You see? Okay? Okay. Yes, Holger.
Thank you, Gautam. It's quite amazing to have you direct in front of me and listen to your message. And yeah, nothing really on my mind right now, because only the feeling maybe earlier that I have the feeling I died already somehow. But maybe I haven't even lived yet. I don't know. It's just beautiful to be. It's just beautiful to be here, and I'm grateful for your teaching and for Roger's teaching, and it's quite amazing. It's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And maybe, do you have a question for me, or what do you see? I mean, is there something on your mind you maybe could recommend, or an intuition or something?
Not really. Not really. I think it's quite beautiful the way you express yourself, and there's really nothing, no question, nothing. Only the main point here, Holger, is that, the key word is, I think I may have died already, as you said. It's a very deep statement that you have made, you see. Now, there's only one measure to know the answer to that, and that is the peace that you feel right now. Because the purpose of death as such is dying to the me with its story. So then, if one is now living that peace, not conceptually, but as one's lived experience in daily living, then it is a certificate, so to speak, that shows one that, oh yes, there's clearly a dying to the old. It's clearly there. And that only you would know.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Gautam.
Thank you all. Thank you. Oops. Yes, Saurabh.
Gautam, I understand it's a very, very important day for you, and your vibrations are very strong. I have been particularly very influenced by you when I came across a small 3-minute video where you talked about somebody losing faith in Shirdi Sai, and you talking about life being imprisonment and we converting into a rigorous imprisonment. So that has really impacted me because I feel very close to Shirdi Sai for many years. And one of your recent videos of about 9 minutes is about complete faith and accepting what is science will. So I thought this is a very, very strong and a good opportunity to thank you for bringing out these capsules, which I keep sharing with so many people. And my earnest request to you would be that, if these small capsules, you can do it on a larger extent, would really influence so many of us who are in the younger field, because some say we don't have time for 30 minutes. But the ones I have shared, these 3 minutes and 9 minutes one, I can see them going crazy on those videos, and I have no words to thank Sai and you for it. So that is my ultimate gratitude to you and Baba. So this is just a comment, and please continue the way you are doing. You have a great influence. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurabh. And you see, I think this lockdown ensured that I was kept busy. And it's actually my privilege to have shared whatever has been my life's learning, life's experiences with those who have come by this teaching. And actually, I should be the one thanking you all for listening to me. Otherwise, I would be talking to the walls, you see.
No, it is beautiful.
Thank you for
Soulful.
that. And,
Thank you.
there might be some more videos based on Sai Baba's teachings on non-doership, which have so often been overlooked, you see, because of the extent of miracle-based stories which have been floated around him. And you can see that he persistently tells people about non-doership every now and then in certain chapters. Like, I think chapter 8, I have done a podcast on of the Sai Baba.
Yeah, I've listened to everything.
Beautiful story of non-doership, you see. And I hope my team can somehow share that podcast on our channel, because right now it's on the Sai Baba channel. But it is a brief story for everyone on non-doership, an actual incident which happens of someone who is given a gift to take from one master to Sai Baba. and what happens with that gift, and how he blames himself for losing the gift, so to speak. And what Sai Baba says on non-doership, it's a very tightly knit chapter, and hopefully this will be shared with you all soon. And so, yes, Saurabh, it would be really a privilege, which Nikhil is doing, who handles the Sai Baba,
Yeah.
to bring out the teachings on non-doership of this great master. In fact, Ramana Maharshi had sent Arthur Osborne, if I'm not mistaken, to Sai Baba. They were alive at the same time. And there's a small booklet on Shirdi Sai Baba by Arthur Osborne. So that is also worth reading. And I'm so glad that youngsters, like you said, who are following Shirdi Sai Baba are resonating with this teaching of non-doership. And hopefully Baba is happy about that.
Thank you to you.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
My very dear friend Heiner Siegelman was, I think, the first disciple of Ramesh. He wrote to me yesterday. We share the same birthday, actually, coincidentally. And he is in Bali now. And he read the essay on the end of duality, which went out as an email to a newsletter to everyone. And he said that he has a reading group across Australia, Bali, and all these places, New Zealand, where they read books of Rameshji. And so they chose to read The End of Duality, which is the final talks, very slim book of Rameshji, the final talks. 4 talks, I think. So he referred to one line which really struck him in this book, where Rameshji says, death is freedom from the enthrallment of daily living. Heiner is in his 70s now, I think. Maybe 70, 72, I'm not sure. And this line really impacted him. And so, this death need not wait for the body to die. If one is no longer swayed by the goings on and the happenings of daily living, swayed psychologically, I mean. I keep saying, this teaching doesn't make one a zombie. We are in human form. We have emotions. We are bound to feel sometimes pleasure, sometimes pain. But when the pendulum doesn't swing from one to the other and more or less has the still center, then one knows that one is no longer being buffeted by the winds of pleasure and pain. That is the difference. This does not mean that one should be and will be in samadhi as a result of this teaching. And if sad news comes, there will be no reaction. It certainly does not mean that. It means if sad news comes, sadness will be felt, tears may arise, but because there is total acceptance of what has been heard, that sad news does not get stretched into a story in the duration of time. That is the only difference. This is not about a perfect way of living or being. This is about being perfect with one's imperfections. Having one's imperfections is being perfect. This is not an ideal personality to strive for. That, oh, I must not be shaken by all these things which happen to me. That's again the ego talking. So if someone like Holger says that I feel I have already died, most likely it means this, because that experience has now been offered through life's events. It does not mean that one is deadened to life. In fact, it means one is now more alive than ever, because one is no longer living one's life through the thinking mind, which is either in the dead past or an imaginary future. Rare is the person who is living like that. This does not mean that a sage, if something happens, his mind will not go into the past. All humans have been conditioned. That is the nature of life. What happens with the sage is he does not get identified with what has happened in the past and therefore does not perpetuate that story into the future. Obviously, a memory may arise. A past hurt may arise in the mind of the sage also. But with the full acceptance that that happened because it was meant to happen, what arises dissolves immediately. There are no impressions left in the mind of the sage. What we do is we hold on to that story of that happened to me. So it is about dying to one's beliefs. And you see, it is so subjective in that sense. I would see at the satsang sometimes the topic of death would come up pretty often. That's what moves one to the spiritual path, and one seeks out answers and meets masters. I remember one boy had come to see Rameshji and sat in the hot seat, and his father had just passed away. And he was consumed by grief. And his whole being was so sad and just down and out, and he kept going on and on about, I lost my father, I lost my father, I lost my father. Now, you see, I would sit on the wall behind Rameshji. So, if he was sitting facing the audience, I was here. So I could see what he saw, you could say. So I was watching all this, and Rameshji rocking on his chair back and forth, and he allowed this boy to go on. And then suddenly, in the middle of it, I don't know the boy's name now, of course. He said, "What's the problem? People die." And Ramesh was really so emphatic, you see. He was more the gentleman. He was not like Maharaj. And that boy was stunned. He said, "What?" He said, "Fathers die. Get on." So you see, it could be perceived as being rude. But what happened was the master shook this boy out of this compression, you could say. And suddenly he lit up, And then Rameshji spoke to him for about 5-10 minutes that, "Look here, this is part of life. I can understand the grieving, but, so on and on and on." And he took him through that process in the satsang. So this is how masters operate, you see. We cannot judge them for what they say. Everything is different. It is like this famous story of the Buddha. I think Ananda, his disciple, was with him. And someone came in the morning to the Buddha and he said, "Is there God?" And the Buddha said, "No." And someone came in the afternoon and said, "Is there God?" And the Buddha said, "Yes." And in the evening, someone came and said, "Is there God?" And the Buddha remained silent. So Ananda was zapped. He said, "What the hell is this? You gave 3 different answers to the same question on one day. What mischief are you up to?" Buddha said, "It's not like that." He said, "In all 3 cases, the questioners are different. One was an atheist. He was dying to ask me this question, so I would say there is no God. And so I said, there is a God, to shatter this position he has taken. One was a total believer in God. He took up this position. So to shatter it, I said, there is no God. And the third one was actually the simplest. His mind does not really dwell on these matters, but everyone was talking about, is there a God, is there no God? So he came and asked me that. And I kept silent because I knew that ultimately he didn't care about this question. So it is the questioner that is different. Don't expect consistent answers from a master because the master is not answering the question. The master is answering the questioner. The master sees where the question is coming from. It is not the question being answered. If it was the question being answered in that sense, the answer to the question would come from the mind. When I say mind, I mean thinking mind. Of course, the answer comes from the mind, but from the pure mind. So what comes out at that time, at that moment, unplanned, that is meant for the student. You see, that is the beauty of the teaching. It is not rehearsed. Do we have time? Maybe one more. Yes, James.
Namaste.
Namaste, James.
On an auspicious day for your Punya Tithi.
Indeed, indeed.
There's this, I grew up in the 60s, so it was always about the spiritual journey and learning to trust your intuition, to go deep inside and I've felt many times in my life that I trusted something inside of me and I didn't know at the time, but that was the perfect guide for me to where I came to in many different great ways. Is that intuition that I'm trusting? Is that really God I'm now allowing myself to trust inside me, or is it something else?
It's exactly what you said.
Hmm.
You see, James, what happens is the thinking mind is the block to the intuition. And where there is the thinking mind, there is the me that is overly concerned with outcomes. And that me is concerned with outcomes because it is fear based. You see? So intuition is always there, intuition is always operating, but it is clouded over by the thinking mind. And so it's not that intuition comes sometimes and doesn't come. It is always there. A sage lives intuitively. And so intuitive living, that's actually a very beautiful word you have used. Intuitive living means trusting that one's mind is too limited to understand what's going on in life. Then one is living intuitively. As I keep saying, when one no longer tries to make sense of what is happening in life, one is living intuitively.
Mm. Hooray for intuition.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. You see, that is why they say the seat of the intuition is actually in the gut. The intuitive brain is, if you see the intestines, the shape of the intestines and the shape of the brain is the same, is it not? You see? So the thinking mind and the gut brain, where in your gut, you already know the answer. That means the burden of your conditioning has not overlaid the intuitive knowing, because the mind has tended to analyze, dissect, and just build these monuments of stories about one's glorious past and what happened to me and how people troubled me and victimized me and this happened to me and that happened to me and all that. And the intuitive brain, which is always there, is just, perhaps you could say, waiting for the thinking mind to die down. And so then the intuition starts functioning. It's actually very beautiful. It does not mean that functioning through intuition means the outcome I desire will happen. It does not mean that, but it means living life more calmly, more relaxed, freely. That is the gift of intuition. Okay. Let's sit for a few minutes in silence. The true cremation is the cremation of all that is false. It is not going to the funeral grounds to burn the body or to bury it and so on. The wisdom teachings are to burn away this facade which we are living. In fact, there are so many esoteric practices. Fire bath is a Tibetan practice. It is actually a practice where people put burning coals pouring from above on their bodies. These are not to be tried, of course. There are practices where students are taught to visualize that their bodies are burning. These are all to break the identification of the ego as the me and the driver of my story. And when you find in your life, in daily living, that your reactions, your judgments, your long held positions, your views are no longer as rigid as they were, as rigid as they used to be. The cremation of the ego is already happening. You become softer, you become more open, you become gentler. The cremation of the ego with its sense of doership. Of course, the ego is needed as the operational element in daily living. Most certainly. But the walls of the ego start crumbling down. The light of consciousness, the light of intuition, the light of pure being is what starts shining more brightly. You know, I'm reminded of when I was in France. I went to a very old place where the Cathars were brutalized because they didn't convert to becoming Catholics or something. So their last bastion was this fort on a hill. It's called Montsegur. And they were given an ultimatum to think over it for one night. The women and children, apparently. I think the men folk were all killed. They were given an ultimatum to convert or to be burnt at the stake alive. They didn't choose to convert. And apparently it is believed that in the morning, the mothers and the children were already standing in line. And a large fire was lit for them to walk into. Now, when me and my French friend, who took me to Montsegur, there was one spot at the base of this hill. It had a certain marking which didn't make sense to me. Very old. I think the story goes back hundreds of years, the Cathars. There was such a tremendous sense of peace that overcame us. Deep, deep peace. It was unreal, uncanny. Something had happened there, you see, that was the feeling one could say. It was only a few years later, when I was doing research on the internet on Montsegur and what happened to the Cathars and so on and so forth, that I came across the story, and I read that at this base of this mountain of Montsegur is a place referred to as the field of the cremated. And what we felt there was not anguish. It was a deep, deep peace. That must have been enlightened living by an entire community. So where do you find peace in daily living? Be there. With whom do you find peace more than others? Be there. If you like reading books, which books do you feel peaceful reading? Be there. Because there is where the ego has been offered up to the fire of consciousness. Therefore, the peace. More important now than ever before. you.